Well, hello and welcome in to Off the Bench. Reed Mouse here. It's good to be back. It's been about 2 weeks since the last time I've hosted. A lot of stuff has happened. The Bengals won a game, surprisingly. That hadn't been going on since, early September. And there was a reoccurring theme. Old Joe Burrow was starting quarterback. But I feel good to be back. We got a fun show for you today. Later on this week, we're going to have a lot of guests. We're going to be talking a lot about the Crosstown Shootout. But today, we're going to be doing a big mailbag. It's Wednesday. It's what we do. It's what we do here on Off the Bench on Wednesdays. Big mailbag. Stone. So good to see you once again. Be back in the chair. Be back in the studio with you. Hope you didn't miss me too much.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely started to miss you there at the end. The first couple days they go on, it's like, we're just going to do the show, whatever. And then it gets to like that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I'm looking up, getting ready to dap Reader up as he comes in the studio, and I just, something in my heart, it wasn't there, and I was a little unfortunate. But glad you're back. I know everybody's happy to have you.
Yeah, it was funny because I walked in the studio yesterday, and I dap him up every day. That's the first thing I do. I come in, dap him up, say, big dog, let's get to work. And yesterday I walk into the studio, and it was like an automatic response from Stone where he just stuck his hand out. He's waiting for it. He was waiting for it, and I wonder how many times he had sat there and waited for it and waited for it, and it just never came. So I'm sorry if I left you hanging there for 2 weeks, but did a great job in the absence. A lot of great hosts and a lot of good content coming here from Chatterbox Sports. You even hopped on the post-game Chatterbox Bengals show.
I did,
on Thanksgiving there, where I did the halftime show from my Airbnb's laundry room, which in hindsight probably should have just passed on that day, but did it from the laundry room. You gotta get on a little late night Bengals talk. Did it take you back to your former days of having to do the live streams back for that other company?
It did a little bit, yes. Craig did a fantastic job throughout the course of the day. He was making Thanksgiving dinner there as well, so he got all that prepared, and then he did the watch-along pregame, and then obviously was on with me postgame. But, yeah, that was a lot of fun with Craig, and a big-time Bengals victory. And I know you were all ticked off that Joe Burrow was playing.
It was funny. So here's another funny thing. Is I walk in here, obviously for the 2 weeks prior to me leaving, I made a big to-do about I don't want Joe Burrow to play. And we'll get to where I sit currently in the mental state of where I think the Bengals are. I didn't want Joe Burrow to play. And what happens? He plays on that Thursday night Thanksgiving game, and I walk in the studio, and the first thing Stone, with a wry smile, and looks up, that hair coiffed as it beautifully always is, and he looks up and goes, how about them Bengals? As if it proved him right because they won one game. It proved him right that Joe Burrow should always be playing anytime he's healthy, which I understand. But I will tell you right now that if something happens to our beautiful sweet prince, number 9, Joe Burrow, over these next 7 weeks, I will walk in here. My hair won't be as beautifully coiffed. I will have the exact same wry smile, and I'll look up and be like, how about them Bengals? How about them? Do you feel vindicated for weeks saying, of course Joe Burrow should play, and they win the game that he starts?
I wouldn't say vindicated, but I just felt like it was so obvious, in that, like, I literally think there was a big portion, and it's hard to tell exactly, but I think a big portion of this town, a big portion of the fan base was like, no, we don't want to see him. And it was just very hard for me to wrap my head around. So I don't know if I was vindicated, but I definitely was like, yeah, that's what happens when Joe Burrow goes out there. And, when people get hurt, I get it's a week-to-week league. I understand that. But it was like people had forgotten what Joe Burrow was as a player. And he certainly reminded some people on Thanksgiving night.
See, I think that – and I don't want to do this for the entire show because we did it before he came back, and we'll continue to do it. I don't think it was a conversation of we forgot who Joe Burrow is. I don't think it was like Joe Burrow is great. He should play every single game that he's healthy to do it. It was more of a statement of, it feels like the season's done. I still think the season's done. It feels like the season's done. I don't want my fragile quarterback that I do understand is generationally great, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best players at his position on the planet. I don't want to put him in a position where he can get hurt again, get banged up again, and shorten the already what seems like a shrinking window that we have here in town. I still hold that opinion to be true, but it was also a good place to be as a fan because I'm right either way. Because if he goes out there and plays, or I guess I'm coming from a good spot either way, if he goes out there and he balls out, marches this team back to the postseason, then what a great, how great it is to be a Bengals fan. How great am I as a Joe Burrow fan to get to watch that every day? But if he doesn't do those things, or if he, even a small injury, right, just misses a week to week, misses one game because of a slight injury, then I'm vindicated in that way too. And I'd be right. I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be right in that case. But I will admit, it was a win-win scenario when and I've always said this about people that take negative stances regarding their favorite team. You put yourself in a win-win scenario because you're either right or good things are happening with your favorite team, and you get to reap the rewards of that. So I will admit, put myself in a win-win scenario. We'll continue to see how this season plays out.
We will.
And we'll see listen, if they charge out and win the rest of the games and go 9-8 and win the AFC North and are one of the most dangerous teams in the postseason, I will sit here and I'll walk in a full clown outfit because there will be or maybe I'll just put egg on my face. Whatever it is, with Dunn's hat, whatever it is, I will admit that I was fully wrong. But as I'm going to get into, I don't believe that to be the case. Stone, you're a history buff. That's one thing that I've always known about you is you're American history, you know
right.
Pop culture, you know all these things. Do you know who Jim Jones is?
No.
All right. So I'm going to take you down.
That's a pretty basic name, though. But
it is a basic name, but there's one Jim Jones, and it has to do with this topic right here, the Kool-Aid. Jim Jones, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a history tour. Okay. Grew up right up the road, 50 minutes north of here, in Richmond, Indiana. He was a charismatic leader of a cult known as the People's Temple. At one point, he was getting a lot of scrutiny. I'm talking directly to you, Stone. Yeah. He's getting a lot of scrutiny for his religion, for his church, that he left the United States and started a commune down in Guyana. I believe that's how you pronounce that country's name, in South America, northern South America. Started a little commune there for a couple of years. Some reports started coming out that it wasn't so great down there. It wasn't a paradise like Jim Jones had described. And what happened? A congressman goes down there and hell breaks loose. They kill the congressman. They start killing these people that want to get out of this commune. And it ends up with Jim Jones, this little man from Richmond, Indiana, gave cyanide-laced Kool-Aid to his disciples or his practitioners, and they all died. About 900 of them died down there in Guyana. And the reason I tell you this, and that's where the phrase is, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Now,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's the story. It happened about 40 years ago in 1907. The reason I tell you that is because we're here in town, and the reason I don't want to believe, it was so easy, and I mentioned this, we've already talked about this, for the 2 weeks before I went down to Fort Myers, Florida, and went on a little vacation, and now I'm back, a lot of things have happened. They lost to the Patriots, they beat the Ravens in their most dominant win, their best win that they've looked, the best game that they've played all year, maybe the best game that they've played in the last 2 years. And it's very easy, now all the national pundits are talking about, Joe Burrow's back. The Steelers are bad. Lamar Jackson doesn't look right. This Bengals team, the same way that they won their last 5 games of the year last year, can do it again this year, win the AFC North, and march through the playoffs like they did 4 and 5 years ago. And I'm not buying into it. The reason I'm not buying into it is because even though every bit of my fandom, every bit of Reed Mouse as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, as a Joe Burrow fan that has defended Joe and Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin and Lou Anarumo and fought tooth and nail on this show for years now, and I've been more negative this year than I have in years past, and the reason is because I'm watching the games. And yeah, they played their best game of the year on Thanksgiving. 5 turnovers from the defense. They're playing better. Joe Burrow's back, and the offense looks right as rain. And yeah, Lamar Jackson doesn't look like multiple-time MVP Lamar Jackson. In fact, he looks to be maybe he certainly is a worse – he's certainly not a top 5 quarterback in this league anymore the way he's currently playing. And yeah, Mike Tomlin – There's chance up at Heinz Field or whatever it's called there in Pittsburgh, they want to fire their head coach because the Steelers don't even look to be good. Not a team that can win the AFC. They don't even look to be a good team. Do I believe that the way these current AFC North teams look, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and even the Cleveland Browns, do I believe that for the rest of this month into December, these final 5 games that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to play, do I believe that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be the best team in the AFC North? I do believe that. I do think that they will play better this month than the Baltimore Ravens will. I do believe that they'll play better this month than the Pittsburgh Steelers will. And I think they'll play better than the Cleveland Browns will. But everything I've seen from this team this year is shown me that the margin for error is so small. On the defense, certainly, but even at times on the offense. Joe Flacco for 2 games looks unstoppable. Then he goes back, and I get he was hurt. And Joe Burrow is margins, tiers better than Joe Flacco, 40-year-old Joe Flacco. But even the margin for success on this offense at times is somewhat thin. And when the margins are thin and you're playing the Buffalo Bills, who are fighting for a playoff spot, when you're playing the Baltimore Ravens, and I get we just beat them, who are playing for a playoff spot, and you're playing the Miami Dolphins, who look a little peskier, and you have all these games over the next few weeks. There's nothing that I've seen from this team through the first 12 games that has me to strongly believe that they can run the table. It's what they've shown in the Joe Burrow era, in the Zach Taylor era, that when it gets cold here in Cincinnati, this team plays better than pretty much any team in the league. I don't have the stats, but you can look it up. Joe Burrow's record in December and January is pretty unbelievable. And it's part of the reason that in years prior we were okay, or at least I was okay, with slow starts, because I understood that when this team gets rolling, when this train starts moving down the tracks, that they will be one of the best teams in the league. And as long as they don't dig themselves too big of a hole, they can climb out of it. But I'm here to tell you that the hole is just too deep. Joe Burrow as a ladder is not tall enough to dig you out of this hole. They are 7-point underdogs this week going up to Buffalo. They will be underdogs, or at least it won't be a field goal favorite. I don't know what the spread will be next Sunday at home against the Baltimore Ravens. I think a lot has to be shown this Sunday against the Bills. But to run the gamut and win the last 6 games of the year, I'm just not buying into it. I guess I'm shielding myself here. I'm not buying into this team. Once again, hey, this team's all the way back. And I've done this before. When they beat the Steelers, with Joe Flacco, I said, I'm on board. Win every game. I'm here for it. And then what did they do? They lost to the New York Jets. They lost to the Chicago Bears. In embarrassing fashion both ways. Then they lose to the Steelers again. And everything that we've seen, they lose to the New England Patriots. 1-7 when Joe Burrow is gone. And as great as Joe Burrow is, they're 3-0 when he starts. He's just not tall enough of a ladder to dig the Bengals out of the hole that they can. They win this week. They beat the Ravens. I'll sit here and I'll be playing a different tune. But right now on, December 3rd, in the year of our Lord 2025, I ain't drinking the Kool-Aid that is the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. And at 4-8, they're going to run the gamut and win the AFC North, regardless of how bad the AFC North looks. Regardless of the opportunities that they hold, and they can, define their own destiny if they can just win out. And boy, would it be special if they win out. Go 8-0 with Joe Burrow as your starting quarterback. Would be one of the most miraculous seasons that you can imagine as a fan. But I ain't buying in. Stone, is that too easy of a layup of a take to not buy into this Bengals team when they go for these final 5 weeks, these 6 weeks? Because everything I've seen, everything they've showed me over the 8 weeks that Joe Burrow wasn't here, was that this team has too thin of margins. This team practically, it isn't good on the defensive side. They are playing better. And even on the offensive side, the margins are too thin. I still have major questions about the coaching. Am I being too harsh, I guess is what I'm saying at this point.
No, look, it's important to make your layups, and I think, this is probably a layup to say that we can't just go out here and think that the Bengals are going to run the table. Definitely. If they win Sunday, maybe I come in here on Monday and have a bit of a different tune. But I think for now, it's one good game. That's the first time we're sitting here on December 3rd, and it's the first time all year they've put together a full football game. Even the couple of games they won early, it wasn't a complete football game, and obviously the games they were losing weren't complete football games either. So after one game to say they're going to make the playoffs is extreme, but with 9 and how he played against Baltimore on Thanksgiving, I think there should be some optimism, and with the defense obviously figuring some things out. But is there, optimism or confidence maybe that this should continue? Probably not. But, we'll watch Sunday. We'll see what team shows out there. And if they put another quality performance out there, obviously no room for error. Even if it's a good performance and they lose, well, that's not good enough. But if they put a good performance together and win, I think maybe we can have a bit of a different conversation next week. But I agree. We need to see this one more time before we get carried away here.
Yeah. And to your credit, we're Cincinnati Bengals fans. We're not New England Patriots fans. We're not Kansas City Chiefs fans. We're not Green Bay Packers fans. We're not San Francisco 49er fans that have had decades on top of decades, and even the Pittsburgh Steelers have had decades on top of decades of success. So maybe we shouldn't grade the same way, and we don't grade the same way that they grade their season successes, and we should take game by game. And, when the Bengals win, at the end of the day, we're fans, that's what we should root for. And you should take it more in stride about you beat a division rival, a team you hate in the Baltimore Ravens, and kind of dominate them on national television, on Thanksgiving, win the first Thanksgiving game in franchise history. And Joe Burrow's back, and it's feeling like, hey, this is good times. We shouldn't take these for granted. But I watched that game on the couch, and for some reason, as happy as I was when it was happening, the game ends, and all I could think about was, why couldn't we beat the Jets? Why couldn't we finish that game against the Chicago Bears? Why did we look so god-awful against the Minnesota Vikings, who aren't very good? Why couldn't we win one other game along the way? Why did we have to run Jake Browning out there for 3 weeks? And why did we have to run a hobbled Joe Flacco out there for 2 weeks? Like, why are we in this situation at all? And that's what's frustrating. As happy as that feeling was of dominating the Baltimore Ravens, as quickly as that went away, all I could think about, and maybe it's just getting older, I'm getting a little more negative, seeing the world in a different light. I try to be this positive guy, and I think I am, more often than not. But I just couldn't help but think, why couldn't we beat the Jets? To where instead of at 4-8, sitting at 5-7 in a much more doable game, or even beat the Steelers and knock them down a peg, or win those 2 games at home between the Bears and the Jets. Whatever it is, it's just so frustrating that the 8 weeks that Joe Burrow was gone, they couldn't muster up more than a win. And I said it 2 weeks ago. I'll say it again. If you ask the most pessimistic Bengals fan, one far more pessimistic than I'm being right now, when Joe Burrow got down, hey, how many wins do you think the Bengals will get over the next 8 weeks? Not even he would have said just one. He would have said, 2-6, 3-5, to where, at the end of this 8-week period, they'll be 5-5. Nope, 1-7, 3-8 when Joe Burrow come back. But season's still alive. Bengals are being talked about in the national media, which is something that for some reason we care about here in town. And it's because of 9. He can dig you out of a lot of holes. I'm just afraid that he can't dig us out of this one. Friday is the Crosstown Shootout between the Xavier Musketeers and the University of Cincinnati Bearcats. One quick tangent I have about this game is growing up here in Cincinnati, growing up a Xavier fan, as I did, I thought this game was quite honestly, a much bigger deal nationally than it has proved to be. I thought because of, the Yancey Gates Kenny Freeze fight, because these two teams for my entire life were top 25 teams constantly. Every year we're in the tournament. Xavier going to Sweet 16s every other year. UC not doing that, but they were in the tournament. Obviously, UC had a very big brand in the 90s, Kenyon Martin. I thought this game was a much bigger deal. I go up to college, and it's the first Saturday in December, and I go, hey, can we turn on the Crosstown Shootout game? And they had no idea what the game was. That's a side tangent. Outside of Cincinnati, this game is not a big deal. It's frustrating, but that's not a bad thing. Let that be our thing. Like putting meat sauce on spaghetti is our thing. Let that be our thing here in Cincinnati. I will say this when it comes to the Crosstown Shootout. In the years of being a Xavier fan, in the years of following college basketball, and I like college basketball far more than I like college football, I can't remember a time where we're going into the Crosstown Shootout and neither fan base is remotely excited about the year that they're going to have. Neither fan base is looking at that game not just as another rivalry game, but it could be and probably will be the marquee moment for both these seasons. I remember both teams would rather have, Xavier would rather beat UConn on the road. UC would rather beat Houston. They'd rather win other games. But I think at the end of the year, we know point blank that this is going to be the marquee moment of the season for either team. And it's a very real possibility that it will be their biggest win, either team. They might beat a ranked team in the Big 12, UC. They've got a lot of talent. But after the loss to EMU last week, it has never been more sour in this city for Wes Miller. And obviously, it's the first year of Richard Pitino. They've already lost some bad games. They have looked inept, the Muskies do. But for one night, we can parade around like these two teams are still really, really, really great college basketball teams, even though that we know that that's probably not the fact. Stone, you're a UC fan. I'm a Xavier fan. You're a die-hard UC fan.
You love pushing that narrative. I don't know why.
What's the first thing you ever told me? You said, I was like, hey, I'm Reed Mouse. You're like, hi, I'm Stone Shields, die-hard UC Bearcats. Bearcats fan. Do you ever remember a time where, maybe I'm just getting old and not as in the weeds, do you ever remember a time that it felt like both teams going into a game are as down as they are currently?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I remember growing up, this game was everything, right? And, people talk about the shootout, losing its luster maybe because, people are so focused on, conference scheduling. You have the conference realignment, right? And UC's in the Big 12 now. Obviously, Xavier's still in the Big East. But, it doesn't feel as big as it used to, which is unfortunate. I hope that changes on Friday nights. And, the toss is going to be packed like it always is. And I hope it delivers. Hope it's a really good game, which you would think on paper that it's going to be a really, really competitive game. But, yeah, that kind of hurts me a little bit because I just remember growing up just how awesome it was. Everybody talked about the shootout in this town. It was split. You got your Xavier people, your UC people. Obviously, Xavier has kind of dominated the rivalry. But, I hope people – and I hope these coaches understand that too. This is Pitino's first one, right? And he had some comments, after their last game where he basically was like, yeah, we haven't talked about it a ton. I hope he's just downplaying it, right? Because if you come in, you're the head coach at Xavier, that's at the top of your list. Yeah, you want to make the tournament and compete the Big East, but you want to beat Cincinnati as well. And I hope he understands that, and he was just kind of downplaying some things there. Yeah,
it's in the current era of college basketball, it is easy to understand. I put this tweet out. Has the Crosstown Shootout lost its luster? Because that's a reoccurring meme that happens every year. It's an inside joke because the Inquirer put out an article about it 6 years ago. Has the Crosstown Shootout lost its luster? And to be honest, it kind of has. And the reason it kind of has is currently neither team. I mean, Xavier was good the last few years. Went to the Sweet 16, 3 years ago? Won a tournament game last year. New coach. But the current era of college basketball, there's new players every year. Transfer portal. There's not guys playing in 3 to 4 Crosstown shootouts. every year where they're spending 40 minutes every single year battling it out. So it's almost got this artificial flavor of they have to instill in these new players that are coming to Xavier in year one, coming to UC for 1 year, and they got to go, hey, this is an important game. I would be willing to bet that a lot of the players that were on UC's roster, a lot of the players that play for the University of Cincinnati probably didn't even know Xavier was in Cincinnati before they signed up to play for the Bearcats. Probably didn't know where the heck Xavier was. So it's just the fact that this isn't a rivalry that they've gotten time to get used to. It's a rivalry that they are kind of being thrust upon them. Especially Xavier's in the first year with Richard Pitino. I mean, he knows about it. You could play the hits, but you don't know about it until you've been in the arena, been in the sit-down center, been in the Fifth Third, until you go to one of the bars, either the few bars in Norwood or the bars in Clifton or wherever where the game's going to be on, and there's some chirping back and forth. You don't know what it's about until you've been around it for a few years. So we'll see. It'll be fun. I mean, it's a fun game every year. Hopefully I get a chance to go down there. I've never been to a game with Stone. We talked about this off air, and you said you've never been to the Crosstown Shootout. Love to get down there at some point, but maybe in the next coming years. Ain't going to happen this year. But we'll see what happens. All right, I promised you guys mailbag here on a Wednesday, as we do every single Wednesday. There are a few questions that we didn't get to 2 weeks ago, so we'll get to some of those, and we'll round out the show. Stone Shield Show coming up here at 11. Here having Paul Fritchner on to talk about the Crosstown Shootout, the host of the Rebound Rundown, former Chatterbox Sports employee. So it'll be a good show later on. We'll have some guests later on talking about tomorrow. Rick Broring's going to come on. I'm trying to get some more guests. I believe one of the Chatterbox Bearcats guys are coming on Friday. And we'll be talking quite a bit about the Crosstown Shootout in these final next 2 days, on top of talking about Bengals as they gear up for a Buffalo Bills game this Sunday. But let's get into the mailbag, Stone.
All right, here we go. First mailbag question. Reed and Stone. Drake May looks like a bona fide stud. Ooh. He is undoubtedly a franchise quarterback and could be a superstar. If you were starting a franchise right now and all contracts were created equal, where do you think Drake would be taking amongst QBs? And that comes in from Brian Kelly.
Ooh, Brian Kelly, watcher of the show. Hey, thanks so much, BK. You seem like a great human being. Drake May, yeah. I mean, the New England Patriots, they look to be true contenders. And Drake May, he's got the physical traits. He appears, from everything we've heard, to be a great leader in the locker room. So the question is if you're starting a franchise right now, if you start drafting people, tick, 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 where Drake May would be taken? And if all contracts, you don't have to worry about money. So really the only thing you're worried about is play, health, and age. Is it crazy to think? I'm still taking, call me a homer, call me whatever, not a homer, call me whatever you want. I'm still taking Josh Allen 1, or in this one of these two orders. I'm still taking Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen 1 and 2. Sorry about it. Chiefs might not make the postseason. I'm taking them 1 and 2, regardless of them being 30 years old. But is it crazy to think that Drake May is maybe the third off the board, Stone?
I mean, you take Drake May over Joe Burrow.
Drake May is 22 years old.
Yes, true.
Joe Burrow is almost 30 years old with injury problems.
Okay. Wouldn't say almost 30, but okay.
I think he is. I think he's born the same year as me. Someone look up Joe Burrow's age. I think he's certainly about to turn 29, or if he's already 29. He will be 30 before 2027. How about that?
He's 28 for a couple more days. Turns 29 in a week.
Okay, so by the end of next year, he will be 30 years old.
Yeah.
So more than likely, next time we see Joe Burrow in the postseason, he will be over 30 years old. Yeah, I'm taking Drake. Also, I'm taking Drake May over Joe Burrow just because of the injuries.
Okay.
Joe Burrow is a better player.
Yeah.
But I think Drake May is 21, 22 years old. You taking him over Lamar?
No.
You're still taking Lamar.
Yeah.
So where would Drake May? I think I'm willing to take, if I'm starting a franchise right now, I'm taking Josh, Patrick 1. I think the conversation can happen after that. I think I'd still probably lean Lamar over Drake, but I think I'm certainly going to take Drake over Joe, just health and youth. Where are you taking him?
Real quick, Drake or Herbert?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd take Herbert.
Okay.
I would take Herbert.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me it's still when we talk about the top 4 guys, and it's a fair point on the Burrow stuff with the injury. I totally hear you. I just think because of his play and how good he is, I still would take him. Again, I don't think that's, again, you're not crazy at all for saying that. I still would take, Lamar, obviously, Patrick, and Josh. A guy that we talked about being a best quarterback in the league, we talk about Stafford a lot, but obviously we would not take him given his age.
Correct.
Over Drake May. And, I would take Herbert over him as well. But beyond that, probably
some young guys like Jaden Daniels, who had one of the best rookie years we've ever seen.
Right, fair, but I would take Drake May over him. I definitely would take him over Trevor Lawrence at this point, which obviously when Lawrence was a rookie, people would probably say that's crazy. I would take him over Stroud, certainly take him over Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, all those kinds of guys. So for me, you take away those kind of top 4 guys and you throw Herbert in there as well. I think he's probably that next guy for me.
Colton Melman brings in a good thing when talking about Drake May versus Lamar.
Yeah.
Colton Melman says, Lamar looks bad, especially with injuries. He won't run the same in about 2 years. Lamar, the way he plays, it doesn't age well.
Yeah.
So, yes, he's a much better player right now, but Drake May, I know he moves around too, but I think I'm taking Drake May 3rd or 4th. I would go Lamar, Josh, Herbert, and I think I'd take Drake May 4th.
2 more. Hurts and Love, where are they?
Hurts nowhere near.
Okay.
Hurts nowhere. I think I'm taking Drake May over Jordan Love. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think I'm taking him 4th.
Okay.
Next question.
All right. Next mailbag question here. As it currently stands between Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow, only Allen is in a playoff spot, and it's the number 7 seed. Do you see a world in which all of them miss the playoffs, or do you see multiple playing in January? And that comes in from another former LSU man, Ed Orgeron.
Ed Orgeron. Coach O. I ain't going to do it.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. No, I don't see a world in which they all miss the postseason. I don't. It's possible. There's absolutely no doubt about it that there is a possibility in which the 4 quarterbacks, the big 4, as they were dubbed before the season started, between Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, the guys that we just talked about when referring to Drake May, there is a chance in which all 4 miss the postseason. Do I think it is much more likely that multiple make the postseason than all 4 miss it? Because I think we're going to see Lamar Jackson and the Ravens either. I can't see the Pittsburgh Steelers winning the division. I truly can't. I think that even if we beat the Baltimore Ravens in 2 weeks, that they'll still win the AFC North, just because I think they're way ahead of the 8 ball than we are. We're 2 games back with 5 games to play. So I think we're going to see Lamar Jackson in the postseason unless he gets hurt again. And we're certainly going to see either Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen make the postseason. So to answer the question in short, no, I don't think I don't think we're going to see a world in which all 4 make the postseason. But it's going to be a much different postseason because we've seen at least 3 of them in every postseason since 2021. No, since 2020. We've seen at least 3 of them in every postseason over the last 5 years. So it's going to look much different because, as it currently sits, it's just Josh Allen. But I think we're going to see at least 2 of them make the postseason this year, whether it be probably be like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, just because I think the Kansas City Chiefs got a tough road ahead. Your thoughts on this question, Stone?
Yeah, I think, look, one of these guys is going to be in. Right now you would say probably Lamar definitely in, which obviously we hope that doesn't come true. We can revisit that on Monday. And, again, hopefully the Bills lose on Sunday, but I would say Allen's probably in. But it is crazy. When you look at the schedule and you look at the standings, it seems like the Chiefs are out, which is really just hard to wrap your head around.
39% is what we looked up earlier.
Right, yeah, which is crazy. Mahomes not in the playoffs, and they're healthy, right? I mean, him and Kelsey have been healthy the whole way. They've had other injuries there, obviously, but that's really hard for me to wrap my head around. Whoever gets in out of this group, you don't want to see him in the playoffs. If you're Bo Nix, if you're Drake May, if you're Daniel Jones or C.J. Stroud, you don't want to see any of these guys in the playoffs. But, yeah, it's – when you have great quarterbacks like that, it shows you how much of a team game it is. For the sake of the league, you want all of these guys to pretty much be in each and every year. But, kind of an unorthodox year in the AFC. And, be very clear. Whoever gets in going to be dangerous out of that group. Somebody's going to get in. But, yeah, it looks like a lot are going to be on the outside.
I think last time we did a mailbag, someone asked the question if we thought the 2024 NFL draft class, quarterback class, was going to end up being better when all is said and done over the 2020 NFL draft class. Talking Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Tua, am I missing one? Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Or the 2024 draft class, you look at the NFL standings, who has the 3 best records in football? Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, and Drake May, all from that 2024 NFL draft class. We could be seeing a changing of the tide. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but we could be seeing where we're talking going into, not next year, but the year after, like, the 3 best quarterbacks in the league aren't Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. The best quarterbacks in the league are Drake May, Caleb Williams. I don't think about Bo Nix, but we'll move on.
All right, next question here. To Steed, Stoneham Reed. Zach Taylor seems to be fed up answering questions about Trey Hendrickson. You speculated that Trey's time in Cincinnati was done a few weeks ago. Do you read anything into Zach's demeanor at the pressers?
Steed, huh?
Yeah,
Stone
Steed.
and Reed. We got a little couple nickname there.
Yeah, how about it?
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Steed. So Zach Taylor, man, as much as I've dogged him, as much as I do not want him to be the quarterback or be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals going forward, as much as all that to be true, he might be the best in the league. Truly, might be the best in the league. We get tired of it at coaches speak, at not giving really a whole lot for the media, never putting his players in a tough spot. We do these on Chatterbox Bengals. We do these reactions to their pressers sometimes. And it's almost a little tired because Zach, more often than not, says the right thing. That being said, you could tell he was definitely annoyed by all the Trey Hendrickson questions. And we talked about it a few weeks ago where, hey, do we think Trey Hendrickson's time is done here in Cincinnati? I speculated even if he doesn't come back and play, they'll look at the free agent pool of edge rushers and deem that he's the best edge rusher, and they're able to franchise tag him, so they might just slap that on him, and it'll be a disaster if that happens. But I think I've talked myself off of that one, mostly because Stone told me I was dumb. Jay Morrison pretty much said, yeah, it feels done. I think this Trey stuff, I think there's something going behind the scenes. I think that he realizes he's not going to be 100% regardless of what he does for the rest of this year. I think whatever he needs to be 100% is going to require a time, he's going to miss time. And this team's not good enough in his eyes to risk his market value, which he created in years prior, and it's already taken a hit because of injuries and because he's over 30 years old, but he's not willing to risk his market value and go out there and play if he's playing at 70%. So that's why I think Zach Taylor knows that, and I think that's why I'm probably reading too deep into the lines. I think he knows that Trey is, hey, I can't play, and what can you do? These are adults. He's making business decisions there. So, yeah, I think I'm reading too deep into Zach Taylor's reactions. I don't know what your reaction to all that was, Stone.
Yeah, I think Zach's clearly fed up. Zach's clearly frustrated. Zach's clearly over it. I've said multiple times on the show, Trey Hendrickson, greatest free agent signing in the history of the organization, but he's a selfish player. And, it's hard to – like, if I was him, I would be kind of like, maybe I would do the same thing, right? You're under contract for just this year. There's no guarantees beyond it, and the team has a long shot at making the playoffs. Now, as a competitor, you would like to see him do everything he can to get back out there. Again, this is kind of a serious injury, right? This isn't like, oh, he sprained his ankle. Like, no, He's banged up right now, and nobody truly knows how much pain he is in besides Trey himself. But the reason why people are speculating that maybe he's being a little bit selfish here is obviously the Bengals had an opportunity when he went down for the final time against the Jets to place him on IR. And the doctors and the trainers, obviously it's Zach's decision, but they're informing him like, yo, we don't need, he's going to be all right. It's a week-to-week thing. Ultimately, they decided to, make it a week-to-week thing, and then each and every Monday, Zach has ruled him out. So that's why people are a little bit ticked off about it. That's why people are trying to read in between the lines a little bit. But, yeah, Zach has been very short when talking about Trey Hendrickson. And when you hear him talk about Jamar and Joe and some of the other great players on this team, the leaders on this team, he's not short talking about those guys. I understand they're out there. But even when people would ask him about Joe Burrow when he was hurt, yeah, he was like, yeah, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to, have to put my foot in my mouth or whatever, but you could just see the demeanor was a little bit different. With Trey, he's clearly over it, and I think the organization's over it, and he's done great work for the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's time to move on after this year.
Yeah, now that we can look at this in hindsight, I don't want to do, not a victory lap, but I was so upset. More upset than I'd been at off-season moves from the Bengals when they gave that pay raise to Trey Hendrickson. It was a $14 million pay raise because I was under the belief, and I'm still under the belief, that he would have played under his, what was he due to get, $16 million? I think he would have played underneath that. I think he might have been late a week, try to hold out for a week, but I think he would have played under that. And the Bengals folded and gave him $14 million, which I made the joke and jest at the time. I said, oh, man, $14 million for 2 weeks of a Zach Taylor run practice. That's $1 million practice fee. He should quit being a head coach and just go around and do some consulting. But that, in hindsight, appears to be a worse and worse move as we continue to go forward because they put their cards on the table, they folded, and what happens anyways, he more than likely is staying out even though he is somewhat able to play. He's making business decisions, and we gave him a pay raise. Man, he took that to the bank. So frustrating, but hey, it's business. Next question.
All right. By the way, that last question came in from Les Miles.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we got all kinds of LSU people here. It's great. Here's the next question. There appears to be more and more smoke regarding the Reds and Kyle Schwarber. Every time his free agency is brought up, the Reds are mentioned. Do you feel more confident today that the Reds will sign him than you did a month ago? That comes in from the GOAT, Nick Saban.
Nick Saban. We're just running it back from LSU coaches,
Yeah.
going back and back and back and back. I can't wait to see who's next. Do I feel more confident today than I did a month ago that the Cincinnati Reds will sign Kyle Schwarber? Yes, I do. Like Saban mentioned in the question, every time Kyle Schwarber's name is brought up in reports, tweets, articles, the Cincinnati Reds aren't just past the first round as speculation. They are always brought up. Like, they are still in the mix. Now, typically, it was the report yesterday. I don't know if it was from Passan. I forget who it was from. Said that the Phillies are still deemed the favorite. And I think that when all is said and done, that's probably going to be true. And here's the reason. To answer the question, yes, I think the Reds are more likely today than I did a month ago to get Kyle Schwarber. I think the odds of them getting Kyle Schwarber are about the same odds as the Bengals making the postseason, around 5%, 1 in 20. Here's the reason I think the Phillies are going to sign Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber has now, through 2 different organizations, not been given a contract, and those teams immediately regretted doing that. The Cubs, famously, going into the 2021 season, didn't offer Kyle Schwarber. They non-tendered Kyle Schwarber. The reports at the time were that they wanted to build up Wrigley Field, and they ended up building a bar around Wrigley Field with the money that they were going to be paying them, and they They got Jock Peterson instead, which was going to be about half the price. They didn't see it going forward. And if you talk to people in the Cubs organization, they regret that. And it's not just because of what Kyle Schwarber has done over the past few years, but it's the intangibles that Kyle Schwarber brings. It's part of the makeup of this dude is truly someone that you want in your locker room. We talk about this all the time, the intangibles, the stuff that you can't quantify on a data sheet. And it's part of the reason that I always make a big what to do about managers in baseball, because I think leadership is valuable. You can't quantify it, but it is valuable. People or human beings, they need leadership. Kyle Schwarber fits, according to all accords, everyone that's ever spent a great period amount of time around Kyle Schwarber realized that he is a top-notch human being. He is a top-notch leader. He's a top-notch competitor. Look at the fact that he has, despite being world famous, making millions and millions of dollars, where does he decide to have his estate? Near his hometown of Middletown, Ohio. And he could, like so many have forgotten their hometown. I admittedly, if I was multi-millionaire, I wouldn't be doing a whole lot coming back to town here. What does he do? He's constantly trying to push forward the middies in the city of Middletown. Just speaks to the character. So the Cubs let him go. He goes to the Nationals, gets traded to the Red Sox. The Red Sox do the same thing. They non-tender him. They don't give him a contract. Immediately regret it. He goes to the Phillies. Phillies never got over the hump, but the Phillies, valuing the leadership, seeing what he brings into the clubhouse, I don't think they're going to let him slip through the fingers again. Now, there might be other things, as we've talked about. One of the reasons that he could be going to the Reds is because he wants to live in this area. His kids are about to be in school now. From everything that I've ever heard about Kyle Schwarber, he's going to be sending his kids to near the school district where he grew up in. He wants to raise the kids around this area. So that's why people are like, all right, that's why there's some smoke with this fire and why they keep being brought up. But more than likely, I think he's going to go to the Phillies just because I don't think another team is going to let him slip through the cracks, a leader like Kyle Schwarber. Are you more confident today than you were a month ago that the Reds signed Kyle Schwarber?
A little bit. I think Mark Sheldon certainly is as well. I had him on my show several weeks ago, and I asked him, and he was like, yeah, it's probably kind of, fairy dust, fantasy land stuff. And then he penned a piece last night about, the Reds are kind of still in the mix here. So I agree with you. It's still a long shot. Thought it was a good comparison. As far as comparing them to the Bengals making the playoffs. Unfortunately, it kind of feels like it's kind of about those odds here at this point. But the point I've said multiple times on this show is that you make that signing with him, go get it, right? I understand there's holes in the bullpen. I understand you don't even have a closer right now at this point. But if you bring in Kyle Schwarber, you're ready to rock for the division. I believe that, and I believe that should be the expectation if you bring him in. Will there be a hometown discount, all that? I don't know. But I feel better than I did a few weeks ago.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say I'm confident.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, like I said, 5%, 1 in 20. The one thing that I keep seeing people brought up, or there's this belief that the Reds will make a big push at this monetarily wise because they think, we bring this hometown hero in. He's a great guy. He's gonna pack the stadium because everyone wants to see Kyle Schwarber play. I like the sentiment. I don't think in practice that's going to be true. I don't think originally people are going to go down there, oh, yeah, that's the hometown kid. He will be a fan favorite if he plays well. But you're not going to pack the stadium because people are fans of Kyle Schwarber and he's the hometown kid. Like if King Griffey Jr. couldn't pack the stadium for a decade here in Cincinnati, Kyle Schwarber's not going to pack Great American Ballpark. That's not going to. If he plays up to where he's played the past few years, sure, people would love. He's going to be our favorite Red here in town. How could he not be? Hometown kid, hitting 55 home runs at Great American Ballpark. Easy guy to root for. Says all the right things. Everyone loves him. Read any report about the character of Kyle Schwarber. You'll be blown away by how highly people think of him. Truly. But the idea that they signed Kyle Schwarber, that's going to surplus 2,500 tickets, 5,000 tickets per game for all 81 games, average it out because Kyle Schwarber's in town. No, how you sell tickets is have a good team or you have something truly spectacle-inducing if Kyle Schwarber hits 60 home runs, that'd be spectacle-inducing. But just the fact that he's a hometown kid isn't going to drive up ticket sales.
Is he definitely done playing the field or is that just a Philly thing? Like he's just a hitter?
He's a truly remarkably bad fielder.
Yeah.
A truly remarkably bad fielder. I think that any contract, yes, he's going to be DHing 95% of the time. Though I think there is he's a team player. I think he would. It's not like when King Griffey Jr. refused to move to the corner outfield spots. He's like, I'm King Griffey Jr., please center. I'm Kyle Schwarber. I'm a designated hitter. I think if you told Kyle Schwarber, hey, you got to play first today. Hey, you got to play left field today, he absolutely would. But 95% of the time, he's going to be your designated hitter.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. Next question here. If I had told you before the season that we would be entering week 2 of December with the Bears and Patriots as the number 1 seeds, you would have called me crazy.
I would have.
With the fact that the Eagles look vulnerable, the Chiefs might be done, and even teams like the Commanders are terrible. Is this the weirdest NFL season you can remember? And that comes in from Jerry DiNardo.
Another LSU, another LSU head coach. Yeah, it is. It feels like every year. Whenever I belittle college football, which I do quite a bit on this show, I tell you, oh, you tell me how great it is. I could go into cryo sleep, and in 15 years, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, they're all still going to be the best teams in the country. That's somewhat true in the NFL. Like, right? The past 5 years, we've seen Patrick Mahomes play in the AFC Championship. Dynasties come and go. For the 15, 20 years before that, it was the Patriots, always competing. One team, the top of the game, right? They might not always win the Super Bowl. They won a lot of them. But pretty much it was always the Patriots. This, as far as I've closely watched, and I admit it, I haven't as closely watched the NFL as I have Major League Baseball or my 29 years of life. But this is the weirdest, the Bears being the number 1 seed in the NFC based off what we saw from Caleb Williams even to start the year. You're like, are you kidding me? In that division, not a chance. The Patriots, a lot of people were high on the Patriots. No one would have thought that they are what they are today. They started, 0-2? I think they started 0-2 this year. The Chiefs on the outside, this young, they're not young. Commanders are actually really old. They just had a young quarterback. Oh, they're going to be terrible this year. The Eagles are averaging they're 3rd and 8 on average. They lead the league in 3 and outs. The Eagles, who dominated the Dynasty Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year. By the way, the Philadelphia Eagles are the weirdest effing franchise that I've ever seen. I have no idea what you're going to get year to year. They could be the best team in the league, bar none, and they could look, and they still are good this year, but they could lose every game for the rest of the year, and that wouldn't surprise me. They did it 2 years ago. So, yeah, I think this is the weirdest. I mean, the Broncos, the Jags, top 3 teams in the AFC, Bears, Seattle Seahawks, Green Bay Packers, 49ers playing Mac Jones half the time. It's a weird year. It's a weird year. I don't know if things will go back to normal or if this is the new normal, but this is certainly the weirdest year that I can remember in the NFL. Stone?
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't remember a weirder year. I know Caleb Williams is your guy. I don't think the Bears are going to be able to hang on here, and I don't think they're going to end up being the number 1 seed. I know they have it right now. Kind of feel like they might be one and done, but you know what? Got to give you credit. Caleb Williams has played good enough. I think obviously he's gotten a lot of help from his coach, Ben Johnson. But that's weird. Nobody thought they were going to be up there. I was high on the Patriots, but I didn't expect them to have the number 1 seed, right? As we were talking about with the previous mailbag question, we didn't expect Lamar, Mahomes, Josh, Joe to all potentially miss the playoffs, right? I think it's been a little bit more status quo in the NFC, but I think the Seahawks certainly have overachieved, right? I think the Lions probably a little bit worse than people thought. The Eagles, as you mentioned, are very weird, but particularly in the AFC, it's just weird. Like we were talking about that draft class a couple years ago. Yeah, Bo Nix and Drake May at the top of the AFC right now. I don't think many people saw that coming. So, yeah, usually a safe bet in this league has always been, go with the best quarterbacks to get in the playoffs and, have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, but it doesn't really look like that's the case here at this point.
And I don't have the playoff map in front of me, like how it all seeds out, but in the same jest of how weird it is, if the Chiefs sneak into the postseason and the Bills make the postseason, I don't think it'd surprise anyone if they're in the AFC Championship game. Like I don't think that would surprise any of us if either one of those teams win multiple playoff games and the Bills are currently the 7th seed. I don't even know what the betting odds are, but my guess is the Bills are still probably one of the favorites to win the AFC, even though they are the final playoff spot. I bet you the Chiefs have better odds than teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, it's just a weird year. Next question.
All right. Dear Dave, my wife and I recently purchased a house at $400,000 at an interest rate of 6.2%. She is a nurse, and I'm an engineer who makes 6 figures a year. We should be doing well, but we racked up over $20,000 of credit card debt for our wedding. Plus, we recently bought a new SUV because we anticipate starting a family soon. The debt is piling up, and I'm not sure how to get out of it. What should I do?
Listen, your first mistake is financing a wedding is just, back in my day, we went down to the courthouse. You signed the nuptials. You signed a piece of paper. You went back and started your life. Probably start with a little bit of cash in your pocket. You got to remember, cash is king, debt is dumb. The paid-off mortgage has replaced the Mercedes-Benz as the status symbol of choice in our country. Next question.
I didn't know how you were going to attack that, but that was good. I thought maybe there was a chance that you said, how did this get involved in our mailbag? This was a bit of an accident here. But appreciate it. Well, I guess we're not Dave. It was to Dave, but great job there from Reed. To the dummies that host on Chatterbox at 10 a.m. Hey, that's us.
That's us.
In 2023, both the Reds and Bengals look prime for an unprecedented run here in the Queen City. It's 2025, and I'm not sure the direction of either franchise. Who do you believe will perform better over the next 5 years? And that comes in from Bubba.
Bubba. I heard Bubba had a nice date with the president not too long ago. Who do I think will perform the best over the next 5 years between the Reds and the Bengals? This question came in a few weeks ago, and obviously some things have changed. The NFL changes so fast. Seeing Joe Burrow again play can certainly change the way you think. But, when they're 1-7 and they look like the worst, 1-7 over an 8-week stretch and look like the worst team in the NFL, it would have been easy just to say the Reds. They made the postseason. But it's hard to discredit the Bengals when they have Joe Burrow playing. If he plays 17 games over a regular season, it's hard to fathom that the Reds will do better than that over the next 5 years. I think the Reds are in a decent spot. They just made the postseason. They've got a Hall of Fame manager who most of the Reds fans hate, or at least the most that watch these programs, Chatterbox Sports programs, hate Tito. But it's just really hard to imagine that if Joe Burrow plays 17 games a year, that the Reds can do better than that. Unfortunately, I just think that is the case. I think the Reds' ceiling is maybe winning the NL Central. If they have just the greatest year that we've seen in the last 30, going to the NLCS. But that feels like a very, very far cry. Even if they make the postseason, and the most random postseason in all of professional sports is baseball. It just is, because the game's random. On any given day, the Colorado Rockies can beat the Los Angeles Dodgers. That happens. But it just seems like a very far cry to think that this Reds team, in the current build, or even with their going forward, and they've got some really talented young players. Got a great pitching staff. Ellie De La Cruz is phenomenal. He could be an MVP candidate. He's a perennial all-star. Yeah, I'm going Bengals just because they got Joe Burrow. And if Joe Burrow plays 17 games, it's hard for me to imagine that the Reds will do better.
Agree, totally. I think also in baseball, it's kind of, it's hit or miss. Like you said, on any given day, any given team can win. You don't really see these teams go on these runs where they're winning world championships all the time. I understand the Dodgers obviously just did that, but beyond that, you don't really see it. I think it's harder to have more like a dynasty, right? The Giants, when they won theirs, it's not like they were absolutely dominating baseball. They just knew how to play in the postseason. They got hot. They had some really good players. But, what you see with like the Chiefs or the Patriots, like if you have the quarterback and head coach in place, obviously there are a lot of people out there that I'm not putting Zach Taylor in the same conversation as Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. I'm obviously not doing that. But when you have the quarterback in place, you have, a lot of opportunity to potentially, go out there and win championships. So I agree. The Bengals have the quarterback in place. Obviously, the health of the quarterback is not always in place, but I think clearly it's the Bengals and just the sport of football. I think baseball is so hit or miss. It's hard to, say, they're going to make the playoffs 5 years in a row. They have a solid roster. They got good pitching, but it's just each and every year is going to be a little bit different.
Yep. All right. That wraps up our show here. Stone, thank you so much. It's good to be back in the wagon. My clock is a little off, like my personal clock, because on vacation for some reason, my in-laws and me, we went to bed at like 8 o'clock every night. The sun went down at like 5 down there. It was. What
time are you waking up?
We were waiting. I still have been waking up at like 5:45, 6 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
Like, luckily I've been able to, like, today I worked out, went on a run, walked my dogs, did dishes. Did a lot of things before I came into the show today. So it's been messing with my clock. Craig Salin has a conspiracy that I don't know how to pronounce the NFL team from Jacksonville. I will admit that I pronounce them, and I truly don't know if it's right or wrong. I call them the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars is how I pronounce that word. I started calling them the Jaguars a couple years ago just for poops and gigs. So thank you so much for being here. We'll be back tomorrow. A lot of Crosstown Shootout to unfold this week. Stone's going to have the host of the Rebound Rundown, Paul Fritchner, up on his show here starting right now. See you guys tomorrow.
Here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. My name is Stone Shields. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on a Wednesday. Good to have Reed Mouse back in the saddle for Off the Bench. He made his long-awaited return. It had been a couple of weeks since we had seen Reed. It was great to have him back on Off the Bench this morning, and a great show in the 10 o'clock hour, but plenty of good stuff coming up here at the 11 o'clock hour. We will talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. Not really a ton of news going on with the Bengals here on a Wednesday. Obviously, they will practice today as they begin their preparation for the Buffalo Bills and what ultimately is going to be a huge game on Sunday. By the way, we will be at Smoke Justice on Sunday, pregame, halftime, postgame show. Reed Mouse will be there, Casey McAllister will be there, and I will be there as well for the pregame and the halftime show. So make sure you guys come out to Smoke Justice and check out that show. We should have a lot of fun, and hopefully we get a really compelling football game, and hopefully it results in another Cincinnati Bengals win. Also, new college football playoff rankings came out last night. I've got plenty of thoughts on that. I think they made, obviously, some adjustments from year 1 to year 2 with the 12-team playoff, but I definitely think there's some more adjustments that need to be made from year 2 to year 3, and we will talk about that here on the show, as there's a couple of teams, and you knew it would always play out this way, right? When you had the 4-team playoff, there was always a couple of teams where it's like, yeah, they kind of got hosed a little bit. Feels like that's going to happen again this year with the 12-team, where it's like, yeah, they made some mistakes throughout the year, but they probably are better teams / deserve to be in over a couple of other teams, so we'll break that down on the show as well. We'll roll through some sports headlines, some breaking news right before we went live here at Chatterbox on a Wednesday. Brian Hartline expected to leave Ohio State for the South Florida job. And I wouldn't say I'm surprised he's leaving. It's been pretty well known that he was interested in becoming a head coach. Obviously, he was the best receiver coach in the country for quite some time, the best recruiter in the country, point blank, full stop. Gets his first opportunity this year to call plays for Ryan Day at Ohio State, and ultimately it looks like he's going to leave for South Florida. There was some speculation that he perhaps would go to Kentucky for the UK job. They go with Will Stein, which, by the way, is a great hire. Offensive coordinator for Dan Lanning at Oregon. Believe the plan is that both those guys, Stein and Hartline, are going to coach throughout the playoff. And you're seeing a lot of that, right? With a lot of these coaches leaving this time of year, basically everybody is having an opportunity to stay with the team that they're at, coach them through the playoffs before moving on. Lane Kiffin, of course, is the exception, as he will not be coaching the Ole Miss Rebels during the playoff. Pete Golding gets that opportunity. He was their defensive coordinator for several years. So we'll roll through that. We'll talk Will Stein. We'll talk Brian Hartline. The Penn State job, what's going on there? You know, they got rid of their coach at the beginning of the year, and they don't have a coach right now. I don't know if they have some grand plan in place to bring in some guy. I don't know. The Kalen DeBoer rumors are crazy. I would be shocked if he left, but it is weird that they don't have a head coach here at this point. So we'll go through some sports headlines as we typically do on a Wednesday. And also, Paul Fritchner, he will join us from the Rebound Rundown. That's coming up in about 30 minutes. Looking forward to having that conversation with Paul. When you want to talk college basketball, there's nobody better to have on than Paul Fritchner. And we're going to preview the Crosstown Shootout. Obviously, that's Friday at Cintas, Friday night. I believe 7:30 on TNT. Should be an outstanding game. And, both teams probably, certainly not as proud as they once were or as good as they once were, but it's Crosstown Shootout. So it's going to be awesome. TAS is going to be packed. And we'll see if UC can win back-to-back years. So we're going to preview that game from a UC angle, from a Xavier angle as well with Paul. And then I'll ask him about some other teams there as well. Big game last night, Duke and Florida. I watched that whole game. That was tremendous. Duke is able to edge Florida. It really had control there in the first half, or in the first couple of minutes in the second half, and boom, Florida came out of nowhere. Boogie Fland really heated up the last 10 minutes of that game. Obviously, Arkansas transfer, played for Cal last year. Cal in action tonight against Louisville. But, impressed with how Florida battled back in that game, had an opportunity, and then obviously Evans hit the big three after Boozer got the double team, and ultimately Duke wins that game. And I said, let's pump the brakes a little bit on Duke. Obviously it's Duke. They're going to be solid, but are they really a national title team? I think after how Cameron Boozer has played here through the first, 7, 8, 9 games, definitely safe to say that Duke, probably not as good as last year, but certainly a national title team. So we'll talk about Duke with Paul. Talk about Sparty as well. They're undefeated. They beat the crud out of Iowa last night. We'll talk Alabama. They're in action against Clemson tonight there as well. So plenty of good stuff we're going to get to with Paul Fritchner. That is coming up in about 30 minutes. Before we get into the show, I do want to mention the deal that we got going on our website, chatterboxsports.com/store. We're selling some T-shirts here, kind of a Black Friday special. We're doing this for about another week, so make sure you visit our website, chatterboxsports.com/store. 2 shirts for $40. Use code DOUBLE in all caps, DOUBLE. Sale runs through December 10th. 100% of your proceeds go to your favorite Chatterbox Sports creators. No off-the-bench stuff or stuff for my show, but it's more, we got Chatterbox Bengals stuff. There's a great an orange T-shirt and a black T-shirt there as well. Chatterbox Reds stuff up on the site. We'll talk a little bit of Reds today. Obviously, Kyle Schwarber, there's some more rumors swirling. Mark Sheldon penned a piece last night. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of fairy dust, Fantasyland stuff. And then he wrote an article last night saying, the Reds aren't completely out of it yet for the Kyle Schwarber sweepstakes. Nick Kirby, Mike Hart, they did a video last night. That went out late last night. That's up on our channel. Check that out if you haven't done so already. Those two guys did a tremendous job kind of diving into that, but we'll touch on that on today's show as well. But Chatterbox Reds gear, T-shirts, 2 for $40. Great deal. Looking for something for, Christmas, for a loved one, what have you. Shoot, you're looking for something for yourself. Go get it. And also some Chatterbox Bearcat stuff there as well. Chatterboxsports.com/store. All right, let's start with the Bengals. As I mentioned at the top, not really a ton of big-time news here today on a Wednesday for the Cincinnati Bengals. They begin their preparation for the Buffalo Bills. Huge game, obviously, on Sunday. But I think really the most noteworthy Bengals news of the day, apart from Ken Anderson, by the way, being a finalist for the Hall of Fame, which is very exciting. He, of course, led the Bengals to a Super Bowl many years ago. But the Bengals are going to roll back the same uniforms they wore last week. And apparently ever since they've unveiled their new uniforms, they've never worn the same ones in back-to-back weeks. So Is that superstitious? Maybe a little stitious. I don't know. Obviously, they won after many losses last week, so they're going to roll back the same uniform combos. That's kind of our big news of the day for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see if that's perhaps a good luck charm for them on Sunday against Buffalo. But I did see a mock draft. Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he does his beast every year. We always dive into that. Looking forward to doing that come draft season. But he's great with the draft. He knows all the players, and for the most part, obviously nobody's perfect at that stuff, but for the most part, he understands who the best players are. And when you read Dane Brugler's stuff, you absolutely have a good feel for who's going to be solid NFL players, and obviously who's going to be picked highly in the draft. Paul Dehner Jr. sat down with him a couple of weeks ago with The Athletic, and they did a great podcast, a great interview back and forth there between those two guys. But the name that a lot of people have been talking about for the Cincinnati Bengals is, of course, Caleb Downs. And I've said this several times on the show, and I'm going to continue to say this. If you are drafting and Caleb Downs is on the board, you absolutely 100%, no questions asked, draft Caleb Downs, right? Obviously, he is a safety, and there's some people that say, well, you shouldn't be taking a safety that high in the draft. Right now, I believe the Bengals would be picking 10th. Hopefully, they are picking later than that after they win some games, and he's, unfortunately not a guy that they're going to be picking. Maybe they would trade up for him, unlikely considering the history of this franchise. But Caleb Downs is an unbelievable football player. He's a guy that could have came in a couple of years ago after his freshman year at Alabama and helped fix your defense. This guy is, there's always a few guys in the draft where it's like, that guy is going to be 100% a stud in the NFL. Is he going to go to the Hall of Fame? We don't need to get carried away there, but is he going to be a starter for a long time? Yes. Caleb Downs is absolutely that guy, and he's just so versatile with what he can do. He's such a cerebral player, right? Obviously, his brother plays for the Indianapolis Colts at that receiver position, right? But from a run-stopping perspective, if you want to send him as a pressure guy off a blitz, tackling, communication with the rest of the defense. There literally is not ball skills, high point in the football, great hands, can hit you hard, is fast, literally checks off every single box. And obviously, if you're watching this show, you've probably seen Ohio State play a time or two, but I really encourage you. Watch number 2 on Saturday against Indiana. The back of that defense for Ohio State, there's studs all over the place, right? But he's kind of controlling everything, right? He is communicating with everybody what needs to be done, and he's making plays left and right. And thought he was tremendous in the Michigan game. He's had a great season again, and just a great career to this point. He's always available. He's a durable guy. He was arguably Alabama's best player as a freshman, right? And then he was a key piece to the national title team last year for Ohio State, and once again is a key piece for them as well. So, I hate doing mock draft stuff at this time of the year, right? But whenever you see that from a guy like Brugler and a guy like Caleb Downs, who a lot of people in this town are saying, yes, bring in Caleb Downs, that's kind of a potential uplifting element to the Bengals losing some games. Now, I think they're going to win several more games. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to go to the playoffs, right? But I do think they're going to win several more games before this thing is over. And ultimately probably be out of range to select a guy like Caleb Downs. But if they were to lose Sunday and lose to Baltimore and then, maybe win the last 3 or win 2 of the last 3, you're going to be in a spot where you could potentially go get him. And, there's some guys in this draft where it's like, yeah, he might be a good player, but he's not a lock, right? Caleb Downs is a lock to be a great player, and he could really help fix your defense just by selecting him. He's the type of guy. The Bengals obviously don't do this. I can't remember the last time, if ever, honestly, they traded up in the first round for a guy. But if you're in a spot where you're picking, you win a couple of these games and you're picking 12, 14, and Caleb's still on the board at 10, you trade up and you give away a lot of resources to go get him, right? There's going to be some Clemson guys on the board that the Bengals probably are going to fall in love with. Peter Wood's going to be one of them. I would go in a different direction, right? I understand Myles Murphy has been solid the past few weeks, but let's not get carried away. The Bengals, they have some kind of communication with the people in their front office with the Clemson football program. I don't know exactly what that is, but they absolutely love taking guys from Clemson. Obviously, it worked out with Tee Higgins, but I'm ready to kind of head in a different direction there as far as picking guys from that school. But if Caleb Downs is available, you absolutely 100% make that selection if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's something that kind of caught my eye this morning, right, as you saw that list from Dane Brugler and had the Bengals taking a guy at that number 10 spot, which obviously will happen if they continue to lose some games. They're going to have an opportunity to pick in the top 10. And if Caleb Downs is there, you absolutely 100% should take him. Another lock to be a great player, a Buckeye as well, is Arvell Reese. I do think, honestly, there's an opportunity that he actually could end up going number 1 overall. I don't think that's hyperbolic. Obviously, he plays the linebacker position right now for Ohio State, but this is a guy, he comes into the NFL, he adds about, 15, 20 pounds of muscle, and all of a sudden he looks like Micah Parsons 2.0. I think he really has the ability and the upside to be that caliber of player in the NFL. So keep an eye on him as well if you're watching the game Saturday, the Big Ten Championship between Ohio State and Indiana. Watch number 2. Also watch number 8 there as well at that linebacker spot. He is fast. He goes sideline to sideline. He can hit you really hard. He's really, really strong. He doesn't get bullied. You're going to have to double team him. All these kinds of stuff when you're watching a guy like Arvell Reese. He is absolutely unbelievable, and I would expect him to definitely be out of range for the Cincinnati Bengals. But if something comes up, and maybe he doesn't test as well as people thought, or maybe he rolls his ankle here in the playoff and there's an injury concern with him, if he perhaps is available, you take him there as well. There's dudes all over this Ohio State team that could perhaps benefit you in the draft. I know there's some people I've seen out there on the interweb talking about, get Carnell Tate. If the Bengals draft a wide receiver, that would be the dumbest thing of all time. Carnell Tate's going to be a good player in the NFL, right? But that's the one position that you don't need for sure, is obviously you paid Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase. You do not need a wide receiver. I know there's some people that think that would be fun. Absolutely not. A guy like Sonny Styles, though, if you're, win some of these games and you're picking more in that 15 to 20 range, he could be a guy that could come in and help this defense out a lot as well at that linebacker spot. I understand you picked 2 linebackers last year, and Demetrius Knight Jr., of course, and Barrett Carter. But, in this league, you talk about this all the time. You got to be willing to rip the Band-Aid off when something isn't working. People were dragging me for saying the Vikings need to move on from J.J. McCarthy. I stand by it. It's not working. I've seen enough. I get he's played a few games, but he's not durable. He's missed a ton of time. He misses guys by 20 yards, right? He's not even close. He's, kind of a cringy guy there as well. It'd be one thing if he said all the right things. It was like, all his teammates love him. No, he's acting like a goofball in the locker room after he had one game where he was like a little bit above average, or maybe even just a little bit above mediocre, to be honest with you. And ultimately, I'm ready to move off from him. Look at the Niners, winning organization. They drafted Trey Lance in the top 5. It wasn't working. They moved on for a guy that was taken last overall in Brock Purdy. Right? If it isn't working, move on, right? They're not going to quit on Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight here at this point, but when they're evaluating over the course of these next few weeks and they're evaluating going into the draft, if it's not working, move on. If it's not working, move on, and that shouldn't stop you from taking a linebacker, right? Because Sonny Styles is going to be a really good player in the National Football League. And when you talk draft with the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm saying the exact same thing I said this time last year. You cannot be in a spot where you draft a guy for potential. You can't do that if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. You made that mistake again. It's going to cost you perhaps a playoff spot. I'm not kidding. That Shamar Stewart pick could potentially directly be the cause of not making the playoffs. Literally. You cannot do that when you're the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're a team that goes to the Super Bowl, right, or a team that makes a deep playoff run and you're picking in the late 20s, and you say, you know what, we really like this guy and we think he can be awesome, you can take him. But if you're picking in the middle of the draft at the 17th spot where the Bengals picked last year, and you have a defense that directly was the reason you did not make the playoffs, and you want to take a guy with high upside, right? Good chance he could turn into a good player, even though he didn't do anything in college and had 4.5 sacks. That mindset cannot be a mindset you have, especially in the first round. You want to have that mindset later on. You want to do that with a 5th-round pick, or you want to do it with your first-round pick if you're a really good team and you're picking in the late 20s, fine. But if you're picking in the middle of the draft, right, and you miss the playoffs because your defense was so bad and you're going to pick a defensive player that hasn't been good yet in his career, it just can't happen. It absolutely can't happen. So we'll talk about more guys. We'll talk more stuff about the draft as we progress here. Again, hopefully you beat Buffalo, and then we're sitting here talking about Baltimore, and you kind of go from there, right? But at this point, I saw it come across the wire there with Dane Brugler saying Caleb Downs, and that's a guy that should excite a lot of people, right? Obviously, people are frustrated by the season that the Bengals have had at this point, and rightfully so. But if you have an opportunity to draft Caleb Downs, that is a organizational transcending type of pick with him, and that obviously would be very, very exciting. But from a news perspective, not really a ton. Mentioned Ken Anderson, obviously, going to be a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which obviously is very exciting. We'll see if he gets in. Wouldn't say I have confidence that he does, but obviously would be well-deserved, as he is a guy that's still kind of, looked very highly of here in this town, and obviously brought this city a lot of happiness, a lot of wins, and obviously a Super Bowl appearance there as well. But the Bengals turn the page to Buffalo. We'll keep an eye on injuries throughout the week there, obviously. Higgins, as of Monday, was still in concussion protocol, which obviously is not ideal. I think he was kind of a under-the-radar type of player in that playoff game against Buffalo that you won. If you go in there and you got those two guys with Joe Burrow, Higgins and Chase, look out. You're going to be in a really good position to have some success there as well. And mind you, the Bills had to go with 2 starting tackles last week. Now, it wasn't an issue against Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, of course, has Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. You would think, how in the heck was that not an issue? But if you're Joseph Osai and you're Myles Murphy, guys that have been playing better here in recent weeks, you could be in a spot where you could, get in the backfield and make some more plays, continue to do what you did against Baltimore. Obviously, that would be very intriguing. We had Wayne Box-Miller on yesterday. He's a big Joseph Osai guy. Admittedly, I've been very hard on Joseph Osai. Obviously, he's on that 1-year prove-it deal for the Bengals, making like $7.5 million this year. Injuries, of course, were a concern throughout his career, kind of held him back right out of Texas, then had the bad penalty in the AFC title game, which obviously was incredibly frustrating, but you're starting to see some production from him. One thing I like about him is the effort is always there. The pursuit is always there, but the pressures haven't always equated to tackles for a loss and sacks. Starting to see that open up a little bit more. To be very clear, my biggest concern with the Bengals, and I asked Box this yesterday, is that they would see some progress here over the course of the next few weeks. They would get hot, as they always do this time of the year. Win games, shoot, maybe even make the playoffs. I don't know. We don't have to get carried away yet, but just win some of these games, and they sit back as an organization and go, let's run it back. We got hot there at the end. We had Burrow. We were playing great. We're good enough to win a world title. No. I don't care how good this defense has looked the past 3 weeks. I don't care if they continue to do it each and every week going on from that. You cannot roll Geno Stone and Jordan Battle as your 2 starting safeties. Battle, maybe, but Geno Stone and Jordan Battle, absolutely not. Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter as your 2 starter linebackers. We'll see the progress in which they make, but I don't love that either. B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton on your interior. I understand B.J.'s under contract. Can't roll those 2 guys out there next year. Joseph Osai and Myles Murphy, can't roll those 2 guys out there next year either, right? Osai's going to be up for a deal after this year, and somebody's going to pay him. It better not be you, right? They're not going to, give him otherworldly money, but Joseph Osai is going to get him a nice little contract here at the end of the year, and it better not be you giving it to him. It better not be, right? Because it's been there. It's been nice over the past few weeks, but that ain't happening to start next year, right? You want to keep Myles Murphy. Obviously, he's still under his rookie deal. Fine. Don't pick up the 5th-year option, right, for Myles Murphy, but you want to obviously keep him around for year number 4. Okay. But do not pay Joseph Osai big-time money. He's going to garner a sizable contract. When you're his age and you have those pressures and you have a few sacks, teams are going to pay you. Let somebody else pay him and move on and try to figure it out at that spot. I've already said I'm out on Shamar Stewart, but I don't think the team can do that, considering he hasn't played enough to this point, right? Like, with him, I'm talking about with McCarthy, I've seen enough. With a guy like Stewart, I don't think you're really in a spot to say that at this point, especially at that position. But we'll see. We'll absolutely see with him. But I do think that's interesting. The edge rushers are going to have an opportunity, right, against Buffalo. They've got some weaknesses there on their offensive line. But are you going to be able to equate it to sacks? Teams don't really sack Josh Allen. Of course, the Houston Texans did a couple of weeks ago, but let's not act like you're the Houston Texans defense. But it's kind of a slight preview there for that game. I'm looking forward to it on Sunday, and we'll definitely monitor Tee Higgins' status throughout the week there as well. Interested to know exactly if there's an update on him from today, because obviously he's going to be practicing for the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, let's transition here a little bit to the college football playoff. I'm a big college football guy. Obviously, you guys all understand that here at this point. Year 2 of the 12-team playoff. Going in, you knew it was never going to be perfect, right? Was the 14 playoff perfect? No. Was the 12-team playoff great? Was it something to be excited about? Absolutely. Is it better for the sport? Absolutely. But there was always going to be, right, some ticked off people. Even if you expanded it even more, which, by the way, I think that would be a mistake to expand it beyond 12 teams. It might be coming, but there's always going to be some teams that get left out. But now it's like, well, you lost a couple of games. You deserve to be left out. Whereas before it's like, With the 4 team, it's like, well, you only lost 1 game and you won your conference and you're still out. Don't really have that issue anymore, but I do think there are some people that are going to get screwed over a little bit here for the college football playoff. Obviously, there is a rule in place that the top 5 highest-ranked conference champions get in to the playoff. And you would think when you make that rule, okay, that's not bad, right? You got the Big 10, you got the Big 12, you got the SEC, you got the ACC, and then we'll let, one group of 5 team get in, and that'll be great, right? That was probably the initial thought. Nobody expected the ACC to be this bad, right? The ACC is awful, and honestly, it's been bad for several years now, right? Florida State's been down, and Clemson's been down, and Miami has kind of been down as well. We'll get to them in a second, but you needed to kind of those 3 to spearhead your conference, and obviously that was unable to be done. Now all of a sudden you got a team at Duke that's 7-5 playing for a conference title. Now, if Duke wins that game against Virginia, and let me be very clear here, Virginia is favored in the game by 3.5 points. Virginia and Duke have played already this year, and Virginia beat the crud out of them. Virginia is not a good team. Right? There is no world, even if Virginia beats Duke, where they are a top 12 team in the country. They do not deserve to get in, even if they win the ACC, right? But if Virginia wins, they're going to be one of the top 5 ranked conference champions. So they will get in. That isn't good. Now, what if Duke pulls off the upset? If Duke pulls off the upset and James Madison beats Troy, which they will, and then doesn't matter, winner of Tulane and North Texas, that means you get a team from the Sun Belt in and a team from the American in, right? Because if Duke wins, they're not going to be in. They have 5 losses. They're not going to be ranked higher than James Madison and North Texas / Tulane. It's not going to happen. So then you're going to be sitting there, and there's a good chance Duke wins. I understand they got boat race last time they played Virginia, but Virginia ain't good, right? If Duke wins that game, then you're sitting there with 10 good teams in the playoff and James Madison and, let's just say for the sake of the argument, North Texas there as well. When you have teams like Vanderbilt, Texas, Miami, and BYU sitting at home, probably. All right, that's not good. That's not good, and that's why there's some more tweaks that need to be made from this year to next year, and I expect that to be done, right? They tweaked, with the bye stuff last year. They made some adjustments. I would hope they make some more adjustments from this year to next year. I think to me, and, what do I know, right? But to me, it's like, let's get the top 11 teams, regardless of who wins the conference championship. I understand you want the conference titles to mean something. That's kind of the point of why you let those 5 teams get in. I get that. And this weekend's a huge weekend in college football. Like, it's Ohio State, Indiana. I want those teams to be doing everything they can to win that game. It's Georgia and Alabama. Should be doing everything they can to win that game. I get it. And there's a chance that the importance of a game like that is a little bit less significant if you do what I'm proposing. But if you get the top 11 teams in and then the best group of 5 team in, right, I think that should be the plan going forward. I get it's not perfect, right? But I think it also allows the best teams to get in. And the reason why I just say get a group of 5 team in and not just the 12 best teams, the 12 highest ranked teams when it's all said and done, is I like the fact that every team in college football has a chance when the season begins. I think that's huge, right? It's like college basketball. Every team has a chance. There's a chance you can make the big dance, and there's a chance you go on a historic run. That can happen. With the 4-team playoff, a team in the American, right, that's like, what are you doing, right? Or a team in the Sun Belt, it's like, you could have the greatest season ever, beat the crud out of everybody, you're still not getting in. That's not fair, right? So I do like one group of 5 team getting in. That's what I would do. I would say, you know what? Who's the best ranked group of 5 team each year, and you put them in the playoff, right? Who would that be this year? Probably North Texas, right? They obviously have a loss there as well, but either of them or probably James Madison. Tulane has a couple of losses there. I just think they should have an opportunity. Now, it's football, not basketball, so the upsets are a little bit less likely, obviously. But at some point, a group of 5 team will win a playoff game. At some point, that will happen. I am confident that will be the case. Are they going to go on some crazy run and get to the Final Four or win a national title? Probably not, but at some point, they will win a playoff game. Beyond that, I would just say best 11 teams. Best 11 teams, because you're looking at how this thing is shaking out right now, and you're looking at a team like Vandy. I think Vandy is probably the team getting screwed the most out of this whole thing, and they beat the crud out of South Carolina. I understand South Carolina didn't have the season that many people anticipated, but when Vandy went in there and did that, South Carolina was ranked number 11, dominated them. LSU, again, they fired their coach. They became a disaster. When Vandy played them, they were the number 10 team in the country. So those are 2 big wins. Missouri, a team that's still ranked, they beat them when Missouri was 15, and then they finish it off by going to Neyland Stadium and beating Tennessee 45-24 when Tennessee was the favorite in that game and the 19th best team in the country. When there's 12 teams that makes the college football playoff and you roll through that Vanderbilt resume, they absolutely should be in. Right? Absolutely. They lost by 2 scores to Alabama, but if you watch that game, it was a heck of a lot closer than that. Pavia turned it over twice in the red zone. If he doesn't do that, Vandy could easily win that game on the road. Again, they didn't lose either of those games, by the way, at home. They went to Tuscaloosa, and they went to Austin and lost, right? And they ended up making that game in Austin really, really close, and they only lost by a field goal. So a team like Vandy, the year they had, I understand you might not like Diego Pavia. I'm not the biggest Diego Pavia guy in the world either. But you look at what they did. You look at how they protected home field, how they went into these environments, won games, and how they didn't get embarrassed ever, right? Obviously, they don't have an opportunity to compete for an SEC title, but they're in a spot where, in my opinion, they absolutely should be in. So that's a team, in my opinion, that's getting hosed the most. Then you have a team like Texas, the whole Texas argument right now. I want to be very clear here. It's not the 3 losses for why I'm out on Texas getting in. It's not the 3 losses at all. People need to wake up to the fact that with the 12-team playoff, 3 losses shouldn't necessarily eliminate you. Alabama, if they lose to Georgia, they should not be eliminated. They should still be able to get in with 3 losses. That's not the issue I have with Texas. The issue I have is you went to overtime against Kentucky and Mississippi State. And frankly, you were lucky to win both of those games, right? And you played horrible throughout. Texas, for the majority of this year, did not play good football. Remember, they were messing around with UTEP at home in the beginning of the year. That doesn't happen for a playoff team. But I do want people to understand that the 3 losses shouldn't be why they are left out. Why? Because they went up to Columbus in week 1 and played. They deserve a ton of credit for that. Right? If they had blown out or just took care of business against Kentucky and Mississippi State, I'm probably sitting here singing a different tune and saying, you know what? Sark and the boys, Arch Manning, they might deserve to get in. Right? I have no issue that they lost 3 games. They deserve credit for going up to Columbus and playing. And if the committee doesn't put them in, that's going to discourage some of these schools from scheduling games like that. And think about it. The game didn't necessarily live up to the hype, right? It was 14-7, kind of a boring game. But we had all looked forward to it for so long, right? And it was talked about for weeks on end, and then it was here, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest opening game ever. And it was competitive, but obviously it wasn't, fireworks or whatever. It was only 14-7. But my issue is not the 3 losses. Yeah, you went into the Swamp and lost. Florida's a bad team. We understand that. Swamp's a difficult place to play. Not banging you too much for that there either. But it's the fact that against some of these bad teams, you just didn't look good. You got hot at the end. The Texas A&M win is a huge win, right? The Vanderbilt win at home, solid win as well. Both those, by the way, at home, right? Not on the road. But just some of the close games that they had and just not looking like a playoff team throughout is why I think Texas should be out. But obviously a lot of people are having that conversation right now at this point. Miami's another team. And, I don't think they're getting screwed as much as Vandy. But, they lost some games they shouldn't have lost. I get they were playing on a Friday night, right, against Louisville, and they were heavy favorites in that game. They lost. Louisville, I think, Brom did a nice job this year, a lot better than a lot of people thought. But that's a game you got to win, right, if you're Miami, with the roster that they had in place, the defense that they had in place, the offensive line that they had in place. Carson Beck, who you're paying millions of dollars, flat out stunk in that game. He was horrible. Right? And then you lose to SMU in overtime, and Rhett Lashley's done a tremendous job. SMU, obviously, in the playoffs last year, deserve a lot of credit for that. But you had 2 losses, and unfortunately for them, the way the tiebreakers shook out, don't have an opportunity to play in the ACC championship, which that shows you that that's broken as well. If Miami doesn't have the opportunity to play in the ACC championship, and you have a 7-5 Duke team playing Virginia, all right, that's got to get fixed, right? That's not good. But unfortunately for them, they dropped a couple of games, and when you play in a weak conference and you don't make the conference championship, you're going to be in a tough spot there as well. So it'll be interesting how this plays out. I don't have an issue with, one of these group of 5 teams getting in. Again, I think going into the season, if you sit there and say, yep, the top group of 5 team is going to make the playoffs, I think that's good for the sport. It gives the whole landscape of college football an opportunity going into the season that, we could potentially compete for a national title. The odds aren't great, but we are in a spot where we could potentially go out there and do that. But if you're in a spot where it's like, well, Duke won, so now Virginia's out, which isn't a bad thing. Virginia's not very good. But now James Madison's in, and winner of North Texas Tulane's in. Those 2 teams are in, and then Texas and Vandy and Miami are out. Didn't even mention BYU, who they've had a great year, lost to Texas Tech, probably going to lose to them again. But they've had a solid year, and I think if they're playing a game against North Texas or James Madison, we all know BYU would be favored in that game there as well. So they've made some improvements from year 1 to year 2, but obviously there are still a ton of holes right now with how the schedule obviously is set up here at this point. All right, we have a guest on tap for us here at the show. And really excited to talk to Paul Fritchner. If you want to talk college basketball, really no better guest to have on than our guy, Paul Fritchner from the Rebound Rundown. Paul, how's it going, man? Can you hear me? How we doing?
What's going on, Stone? Can you hear me?
I can, yes. We're in a good spot.
So you're doing all this. You're a one-man band here. You're producing all this. I can see you in the VMix lab there. You're doing all this yourself.
I am, yes, doing a little bit of everything. People bang on me from time to time because I'm not always looking at the camera. But, yeah, we got a lot going on here. But, yeah, I think we're all good.
Love that.
Yes.
Love that. Let's talk hoops, brother.
Let's do it. Appreciate you making some time. I know, obviously, it's a very busy week for you. But we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. But, obviously, I do want to, emphasize the Crosstown Shootout. So let's start with that. Going into the year, right before the season started, we talked to you obviously a couple of weeks ago, and it felt like UC was in a spot where, you know what, they're probably going to go back-to-back. They're probably going to win 2 shootouts in a row, and then the season begins, and that kind of looks true as well, right, because Xavier gets off to that horrible start. They get blown out by Iowa. They had the upset there at home as well, and then things are kind of shifting in an opposite direction a little bit here. Next thing you know, Xavier's beating West Virginia, blowing out the teams they should blow out, and UC's dropping a game at home to a team that was going to be bad in the MAC in Eastern Michigan. Has it felt like the momentum in this game has kind of swung a little bit, maybe back into Xavier's hands here?
Yeah, I think that's the main headline heading into Friday night is the fact that you hit the nail on the head. Before the season, it was going to be an expectation that Cincinnati would probably be favored by 4, 5, 6 points in this game. And quite honestly, it would be a disappointment to Cincinnati fans if they walked out of here and hadn't won the game. I'm sitting in the bowels of Cintas right now after Richard Pitino's press conference to preview the Crosstown Shootout, and that was something that I was sitting there thinking about as I was listening to the players and to Pitino talking about it, is just how different this game feels compared to where it was 3 weeks ago, and the fact that Xavier all of a sudden in those 3 or 4 days in between the Santa Clara game and the Iowa game, yeah, you lose to Santa Clara by 19, you lose to Iowa by 19, but the 19 to Iowa felt different than the 19 to Santa Clara, because the 19 to Santa Clara, quite honestly, it could have been 30. They were never in that game. It was never close. Santa Clara was the better team. They came in here and they blew Xavier out. But against Iowa, it felt like something changed. There was something in those 3 days leading up to the Iowa game where the coaching staff went back to the drawing board. They figured things out, and they said, we're going to change some things around, went with a different starting lineup. All right, took over the point from Roddy Anderson, and Jovan Milicevic goes down into the middle, playing more of that scoring role as a 5. And the difference being now that they've completely changed as a team. Their identity going into the year, if you would have told me this team was a 3-point shooting team, I would have said you were crazy. But here we are, 9 games into the year, whatever we are, and Xavier's become one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. Purely by volume, they need to, because their interior just hasn't played as well as it's needed to. So going into Friday night, Xavier's probably going to be favored in this game.
Right.
If you just look at the computers, Xavier's a 1 or 2 point favorite in most computer models, and generally the sports books follow those within a half point or so. So if it's Xavier minus a half or -1 on Friday, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's such a change from where it was going to be leading into the season. And, for Cincinnati, Richard Pitino pointed it out in the press conference just now. You ask about that Eastern Michigan game. He made the point, you throw out that game because Cincinnati was without Bob Miller. They were missing some of their talent from an offensive perspective as a coaching staff preparing for it. They're not using the Eastern Michigan game as a game that they're looking at. But, look at Louisville. They played well for the first half, just weren't able to finish. So this game, Stone, that's a long-winded way of saying the dynamic of this game has changed so dramatically in the last 3 weeks.
No doubt. And you kind of touched on this a little bit with obviously shooting the ball a lot better, and you've seen some progression there certainly as well. But anything else stand out to you as far as why they've been able to improve so drastically? Like we had you on Off the Bench talking to Reed, and it's like, yeah, that might be one of the worst teams in the Big East. And maybe that could still be the case, but I look at this team over the course of their past few games, and, you know, I see a lot of development. And obviously that was kind of the big thing with Pitino, right, is everywhere he goes, he develops the talent in which he has. And I think you've certainly seen that over the course of the past couple weeks.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, Stone, is that they're taking care of the basketball. They have one of the highest assist rates in the country, and they're top 10% in turnover percentage, or in another way of saying it, not turning over the ball. So when you assist on as many shots as Xavier does, and when you don't turn the ball over for as much passing as they have in their offense, when the ball movement is fluid and you're taking care of the ball, that's been the most impressive thing for me, especially with a group where you only had two players that were familiar with this system, Jovan and Filip Borovichinen, who are the two players that transferred from New Mexico. Otherwise, you have an entirely new group of players playing in this system for Richard Pitino. You don't generally see that kind of an assist rate, that kind of a low turnover percentage when you're playing fast, when you're playing up tempo, and you're swinging the ball around the perimeter, when there's a lot of passing before you get to your shot. Bad things can happen. But so far, that hasn't happened for Xavier. They haven't had a game with more than 13 turnovers yet. They've had back-to-back games with single-digit turnovers. In fact, 2 games ago, they had 5 turnovers. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care that it was Texas A&M Corpus Christi. To have a Division I basketball game where you only commit 5 turnovers, that is significant. Because even in the course of play against whoever it is, you might just throw the ball away, or somebody might cut and you throw it behind them, whatever it is. 5 turnovers in a game is huge. And if you can limit turnovers on Friday night for the length and athleticism that Cincinnati has, that's going to go a long way to Xavier trying to win this game.
Trey Carroll was a guy that you spent a lot of time talking about. Before the year, you're like, yeah, I think this is really kind of an X-factor type of player for Xavier, and I think he certainly has played well over the course of the past few weeks. What's been your takeaways on his performance this year?
Yeah, he's playing like somebody that has played a lot of college basketball. Yeah. And that's been my biggest takeaway, is that you can tell the experience that he has. I do think there have been times where maybe he's forced a little too much. He gets into the paint, or he gets, into that 10 to 12-foot range, and he's trying a lot of those push shots that haven't fallen. You take those away, you clean up some of his shot selection, his percentage goes up. Xavier becomes a more efficient offense. I think that's the one thing I'm looking for going forward from Trey Carroll, but he's shot the ball from 3 exceptionally well. And I think even if you talk to him, he wouldn't consider himself a 3-point shooter, but he's still shooting the 3 at a high enough rate that you can go out there and depend on him to make a couple if he needs to, which has been an added bonus for Xavier so far.
From a UC side of things, clearly without Baba Miller, it's trouble. Didn't have him in the Eastern Michigan game. You lose at home. You get him back against Tarleton State, and you only had a 2-point lead at halftime there in that game. They've got a lot of issues right now. In your opinion, what are they?
Well, I offensively, it's really tough for me to sit here and just say the shots aren't falling, because I don't even really think the shot selection is great. Mm-hmm. When you have the size that UC has, when you have Mustafa Cham and Sean Abayev and Baba Miller, and you're settling for as many 3s as you're settling for, I don't really understand that. And Baba Miller, I mean, if you look back at the game the other night against Tarleton State, I had Keegan Nickerson on the rebound rundown today, and he said the same thing. UC made 16 threes. If they had not shot the ball as well as they did from 3, if they make 8 or 9 threes, they lose that game, right? Their 3-point shooting bailed them out against Tarleton State. They still did not play that well. They just shot the ball very well, and that's what's going to need to change on Friday night. You're coming into a hostile environment. I don't know if you have enough time. But yeah, I think a lot of fans sometimes, a microcosm of this is halftime. But even still, like practices leading up to a big game week, right? It's different in football than it is in basketball. It's really hard to change big picture things in just a 2 or 3 day span. You can change some stuff. You can tweak some stuff, right? You can add a zone, or you can add some sort of a couple offensive schemes. But to do something big, right, to drastically change what you're doing, it's hard to do on a short turnaround.
Yeah.
And sometimes fans think you go into the halftime locker room and a team comes out of halftime and all this stuff is there's not that much happening in a halftime locker room. Yeah, your coach gives you a message, maybe a couple things to look at, and then you go out there in the second half, and maybe just by nature of the fact you haven't been playing for 20 minutes, a team's going to cool off and another team's going to, gain a little bit more confidence. But the bigger picture of that is taking a few days in between the Tarleton game and in between the Crosstown shootout. It's not like you're going to go in there and change a ton. So can you work the ball into the interior and try to challenge Xavier's interior defense, which has not been good this season, or come to Cintas and just hope the threes fall?
No doubt. People obviously are growing increasingly frustrated with Wes, and sometimes, he'll say stuff after the game. Makes me scratch my head a little bit. You just mentioned, tough to make wholesale changes on a quick turnaround, but he said after the Eastern Michigan game, he's like, well, we haven't been able to practice much, and we're just playing. You're playing Eastern Michigan, right? It's a team that's supposed to be at the bottom of the MAC. How important is this game for Wes? Like, people have said maybe he's coaching for his job. Do you think it's that serious, or where are you at here with him going into this game on Friday?
I think, I'm not going to sit here and say that if Cincinnati loses to Xavier on Friday night. I was listening to shout out our guys Joe and Jeremy on the final quarter. They made a great point. They were comparing it to Ryan Day last year, where everybody wanted to fire Ryan Day after the Ohio State lost to Michigan. Then he goes and wins the national championship. I'm not saying that Cincinnati is going to win the national championship this year. I think the ceiling for this Cincinnati team is really making the NCAA tournament, right? Maybe you win a game. They're certainly talented enough to do that. Yeah. And the Big 12 looks to be one of, if not the best conferences in the country this year, with the SEC taking a slight step back. The Big 10's right there. But if you're going to have the opportunities to make the tournament with games in the Big 12, but you have to win a game like this. Cincinnati hasn't won the Crosstown shootout at the Cintas Center since 2001. Kirk Kriisa is the only player in this game who was alive the last time Cincinnati won at Cintas. I mean, it has been a long time. It was an expectation for Cincinnati coming into the year that they were going to win this game. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like Xavier, the door is swung open for them to steal this one at home. So if you're Wes Miller, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you lose the game, he's going to be fired on Saturday morning. But the pressure will continue to mount for Wes that he'll have to make some noise in Big 12 play. I think the standard for Wes already going into the season was that he was going to have to make the NCAA tournament. But at that point, if you lose the Crosstown shootout, I don't even know if making the tournament as a 10 seed and immediately losing to the 7 seed is enough, right? I mean, I think you really, if you don't win this game on Friday, and to be quite honest with you, I'm not even sure winning this game on Friday moves the needle as much as, because of what's already happened. That loss to Eastern Michigan, not looking great against Tarleton State, the attendance at Fifth Third Arena, all of those things combined, I don't know if winning the shootout is going to move the needle as much as you thought it would have coming into the season. It will move the needle. There is no doubt about it. I'm not trying to downplay that. That would be a massive, massive step for Cincinnati as a program. It'd be a huge deal for Wes. But with the way Cincinnati is playing, I think they would have to do a little more to make up for it in Big 12 play too.
Any rotation changes maybe that you would like to see for Cincinnati? Buck Harris, obviously, he's been banged up, but he's been a great spark off the bench. And sometimes, obviously, when you have that guy off the bench that can bring that juice, it's not always the best idea to put him in the starting lineup. But any questions for you on, maybe we need to switch out the rotations a little bit? I
don't know if I'm switching out the rotations. As it relates to Friday night, one guy I'm keeping an eye on is Kirk Kriisa, because he just feels like the type of spark plug guy where if we walk out of here at 10 o'clock on Friday night and we look at the stat sheet and it says that Kirk Kriisa had 20 or 25 points on 5 or 6 made threes, I just wouldn't be shocked, because this is the type of game that he lives for, the type of guy that he is. So as far as a rotation, but going forward, you got to get more. You're already getting a lot. You got to get more out of Baba Miller because you're depending on him. And I'm not saying he's playing bad. I just think what you're getting out of him and the talent that he has, you're hoping you can get even more out of him. And then the other option is Mustafa Cham. I think he just needs to play more within his size. He needs to play bigger. He needs to own his size better than he has this season. I would like to see more out of him.
To me, the biggest key in this game.
I lost you there.
Oh, you got me?
There you go. You got me?
Yeah, I got you. You got me?
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
All right, cool. To me, I think the biggest key in this game kind of feels like Xavier's perimeter shooting, and obviously you touched on how important that's been for them as they've kind of gotten hot here over the past few games, and always in the shootout it seems like they shoot the ball well when you just kind of look at the scope of the shootout over the past 10, 15 years. Any other keys to the game you think for you going into Friday?
From a Xavier perspective, no, I think I've hit on everything. Just they're going to need to take care of the basketball. They're going to have to figure out what they want to do on the interior, because I think UC size could give Xavier a lot of problems. And then, I think this could set the record for most threes attempted in a crosstown shootout between both sides, because I think both teams are going to kind of hope that the threes bail them out of this game. And whichever team shoots the ball better, as basic as it sounds, whichever team shoots the ball better from three is going to win this game.
Totally agree. Patino had some comments, after the last game where he was like, "Yeah, we haven't really talked about the shootout much," and I was kind of, it kind of puzzled me a little bit. I get coaches, one game at a time, focus on what's ahead of you. I totally understand that, but this obviously is his first time being the head coach for Xavier in the shootout. He knows what he's getting himself into here, right? Obviously, you just had the press conference with him. He knows what's at stake here.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The one point that he did make is, there aren't a lot of players in this game. Isaiah Walker, his dad Tyrese played at Xavier. Isaiah has been to the Crosstown Shootout his entire life. He understands what this game is. He was actually just talking about it in the press conference that he was conveying to the rest of the Xavier team that, hey, this game is different. This game does mean something a whole lot more than just any other normal game. This game means something to this team. It means something to this fan base. It means something to both fan bases. It means something to this city. So I think having a guy like Isaiah Walker for Xavier is important to be able to, convey that message. But for Patino, he definitely understands this game. There's a difference in understanding it and then actually walking out there on Friday night and seeing the crowd and understanding what the game feels like. But he's coached in some big environments. The Pit is an incredible arena in the Mountain West. It's one of the best venues in the country. It's such an underrated place that, has gotten national attention before, but, being in the Mountain West and on the West Coast, sometimes it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. It's a monster place to play, and they have great atmospheres there. He is certainly no stranger to a great atmosphere, but understanding this game in this city, he can answer what he answers on the stage for sure, but
right.
He knows what this is going to mean on Friday night.
Paul Fritzner of the Rebound Rundown joining us live here for a couple of more minutes on the show. I want to transition here a little bit away from the shootout and ask you a couple of national questions, because college basketball obviously has been great, and there were some great games last night as well. I'm watching the Duke-Florida game, great college basketball game. I'm not a Duke fan by any means, but as they were going on their run in the tournament last year, and you got the freshman flag, Knipple, I love Shire, Malawach obviously there as well, kind of fell in love with them a little bit, and then obviously they get their hearts ripped out. And then going into this year, you knew there was going to be some new faces and didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And you heard about this Boozer kid and how great he was going to be. Clearly the hype is real. He's one of the most efficient guys in the country, one of the best players in the country. Great game last night against Florida. Florida, obviously lost a couple of guys, but, still have Condon in place and Houck, who was, off the bench for them. You get Boogie Flan in the transfer portal. What was just kind of your takeaways from that game? And do you think Duke is a real national title contender? Because I had some questions going into the year, but I'm like, yep, they're the real deal.
I think I don't know if they're a team that I would put right now as a favorite to win a national championship, because I do think they do. I think they have some questions that need to be answered on the offensive. And you look at last night, Isaiah Evans, credit to him, man. He was 0 for 7 going into that last shot from 3. And then he steps up, hits a game-winning 3 when it matters the most against a really good Florida team. That was an incredible spot for Isaiah Evans, who has impressed me this season, even, in a game like that last night where he was struggling to hit the most important shot. I think Duke is just one step below the cream of the crop in that 1A tier, where right now it's looking like, You have Michigan up there. Arizona probably has the best resume in the country. Gonzaga had the argument until they got their doors blown off by Michigan players era. Purdue, they're the number one team in the country, and it feels like they're almost flying under the radar because Michigan's got all the attention right now, and so does Arizona. So I would have those teams. Houston certainly has an argument, but they struggled with Syracuse in the players era. There are teams that I think are in that very, very top conversation. I would maybe put Duke in that 1B as a team that if they won the national title, I wouldn't be overly shocked, but I wouldn't put any money on them to win the national title right now.
I've always been a big Tom Izzo guy, and they've kind of maybe surprised some people a little bit. They're winning a ton of games. In this day and age of college basketball, it's always kind of a year-to-year basis. He's here for a year. He's going to hit the portal, go somewhere else, make some money. You look at this Michigan State team, their three best players, Kohler, Carr, and Fears, are all back, and I think that could speak volumes, especially when they make a run into March. Your thoughts on the Spartans, as obviously they're undefeated, and they had a big win last night as well.
Well, I think Fears is so fun to watch. I just think he's everything good in college basketball is him. And he is so fun. He's so talented. He's exactly what Michigan State needs. I think that Michigan State's roster is fairly limited. They feel like a second weekend type team, a team that could get to the Elite Eight and maybe challenge for a Final Four spot if the bracket breaks right for them. They're not. They'd be in that second tier of teams that feels right in that 10 to 20 national ranking for most of the season. But credit to Tom Izzo, the fact he's been doing it this long, and the retention I think it's underrated, the retention he's had on that roster. Shaka Smart and Marquette get all the attention for, hey, we're not going to go to the portal. We're going to do it our way. We're not going to get any guys that we haven't developed here in our system. Michigan State's had a fair amount of retention too, and he's been able to do it his way. And to his credit, he's done it very well because that's the kind of coach that Tom Izzo is.
Lastly, Paul, Alabama, they've had a gauntlet. They've challenged themselves several times throughout the year to this point. Have a couple of losses. They're in action tonight against Clemson. I look at Nate Oates. I absolutely love Nate Oates. What he's been able to accomplish here at Alabama is unbelievable. He's basically done everything other than win a national title here to this point. And I thought with the group he had coming into this year, this may have been his best chance to win a national title. Obviously, the backcourt, probably the best backcourt in the country with Philon there and Holloway there as well. Question for me is kind of the size. You had Sherrell coming back as a sophomore, but they kind of got buoyed a little bit in the post against Purdue, which Purdue going to do that to a bunch of different teams. Kind of your takeaway on the Crimson Tide right now and where you would put them as far as, being a national title contender.
Well, I'll answer this question from the perspective of the SEC because last year the SEC was the best conference in the history of the sport.
Right. Was
the 2025 SEC. They're not that this year. Last year they got 13, 14 teams. Right. I think 13, 14 teams into the – I'm thinking maybe they get 10, 11, which is still a lot, right? That's still a ton of teams, but they're not going to get into the teens this year. And to me, when I look at Alabama, Kentucky's really struggling right now. You look at the top of the SEC, Florida doesn't look like the team. Xavier Lee has not translated up for Florida that they were hoping that he would. Florida has a lot of questions that they need to answer. The top of the SEC is really good, and Alabama is right in that conversation. And if they can go into the SEC and win the SEC, which I think they're very capable of, then that's going to tell me that this Alabama team is different, that the pace that they play with, the scoring, is going to set them apart from years past with Alabama. And yeah, I don't think I would sit here and argue with you that this could be Nate Oates' best team.
All right, great stuff. Paul Fritchner joining us here on the show. Paul, we appreciate you. Tell everybody all about the Rebound Rundown and if you got any broadcasts coming up in the future there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebound Rundown, plenty of Crosstown Shootout coverage going into the game on Friday night. Had Keegan Nickerson on today from Bearcat Journal to preview it from Cincinnati side. Have Rick Boring on tomorrow to preview the Xavier side. And then I think I would do a live show tomorrow night, call-in show. The good old Twitter Spaces do that Thursday night. But, no broadcast Stone until January. I'll be back on CBS Sports Network in January. But month of December, settling in, getting dialed on the rundown, and moving forward. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir, Paul. I appreciate you making some time, and as always, would love to do it again soon. You're the man, Paul. Thanks so much.
Anytime.
All right, Paul Fritchner. Great stuff as always. college basketball guru, Rebound Rundown. Make sure you check that out. They're always talking great college hoops over there, and we certainly appreciate Paul and his time. Obviously, it's a busy week getting ready for Xavier and UC on Friday. He was at the Patino press conference earlier this morning, and he made some time for us here at the show, and we certainly appreciate Paul Fritchner. He is absolutely the man. All right, just about out of time here. I want to just touch on Schwarber a little bit. Obviously people in this town, people in this city have been begging the Reds, right? Just bring him in. And I've said here on this show, like, if you do him and nothing else, if you bring him in and do nothing else, fine, right? Obviously, you'll still have holes. The bullpen needs work. You don't have a closer as of now. But if you get Kyle Schwarber and that's it, I'm happy. Let's go. Opening day, we'll see you there, right? We'll see exactly if this comes to fruition or not. I would say it doesn't feel as much of a pipe dream as it did a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, right? We had Mark Sheldon, MLB.com, tremendous job covering the Reds, has done it for a long time. Asked him about Schwarber, of course, right away when he was on during a segment on our show, and he was like, yeah, it's probably, Fantasyland stuff, fairy dust stuff, probably not going to happen. Well, he had a piece out last night that basically said, not so fast. The Reds are kind of still in the mix here. Phillies are viewed as the favorites here for Schwarber, but it's very clear, and Seg Dennison talked to him at an event at Middletown a couple of weeks ago, and just watching that interview, look it up if you haven't seen it already. Like, clearly he's got a lot of love for this town, and clearly he would, if it were up to him and the finances were the same, he would want to be a Cincinnati Red there as well. So it's interesting. Nick Kirby and Mike Hart did a video last night. That went out last night. Check it out if you haven't done so already. They kind of detail the whole thing, but it'll be interesting to monitor. I don't know when we're going to find out about this news. Obviously, some guys are joining new teams here at this point. I don't know how much longer things will go for Kyle Schwarber, but I do think there's an opportunity here for the Cincinnati Reds. And when you have a guy like this, think about this. When you have a free agent, nobody is going to sit there and say, I want to go to Cincinnati and play for the Reds. It's just kind of the reality of the situation. Yeah, we all would because we're Cincinnati people. I get that. But if you have a stud free agent, they're not going to want to come to Cincinnati. Well, when they're from Cincinnati and they have a lot of love for Cincinnati and spend their offseason here in Cincinnati, that changes a little bit. You have an advantage over some of these other teams. You need to capitalize. And if you're, the Reds front office, you need to be doing everything in your power to make Schwarber know how badly you want him, how badly you want him to return home and play for this franchise, how proud it would make you, and how special it would be to this city, right? We've talked about the Reds ownership, the Bengals ownership, and how they just miss time after time again. They just don't understand very simple things. They need to make Schwarber feel like he is wanted very badly here because he is. The fan base wants it as well. And look, I'm not a, nerd. I don't know exactly, it's going to lead to this more wins or what have you. Trust me, Kyle Schwarber will win you. You'll win more games with Kyle Schwarber than you will without Kyle Schwarber, right? I mean, talk about Ellie, giving him some protection in the lineup. You put Ellie and Schwarber in that lineup together, all of a sudden, okay, we're working with something here. And you've had guys, utility guys, that have stepped up for you big in the past. Steer obviously going to be back, right? Friedel has been solid for you there as well. So if you can just plug Kyle Schwarber in there, boom, there's 46 to 50 home runs, which is nice. And, as far as selling more tickets, I don't know, probably not, right? It's not going to be that big of a deal. But as far as winning more baseball games and scoring more runs, absolutely that would pay dividends if you brought in Kyle Schwarber. Here at the channel, we'll continue to talk about the Kyle Schwarber sweepstakes. Obviously, our Chatterbox Reds crew, nobody covers the Reds like we do here at Chatterbox. So subscribe if you have not done so already and check out our Cincinnati Reds coverage here at the channel. And reminder, I mentioned this at the top of the show, we got our T-shirts on sale, chatterboxsports.com/store. 2 shirts, $40, use code DOUBLE. Black Friday sale, doing it for about a week. Great Christmas present. You want some swag for yourself? That works too. Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds, and Chatterbox Bearcats all up on our site, chatterboxsports.com/store. Help us out. Get some swag. Get some merch. Help us out. Help yourself out there, obviously, as well. But check those out on our website, and we certainly would appreciate it. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. We certainly appreciate Paul Fritchner for making some time on a busy week. That interview will be out in podcast form and, of course, on YouTube later, and some clips from social media there as well. We will be back live here tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Reed Mouse is back in the host chair for Off the Bench tomorrow. It was great having him back today, and we'll have our usual 2 hours of programming tomorrow on a Thursday, and plenty of exciting stuff to talk about, and probably a couple of more guests on the show tomorrow there as well. But until then, take care, everybody.